So let's take a look at this VARC assignment. Isme I've captured AIMCAT 2404. So there are 3 passages in this and 3 para-summary questions. So these are all what I found to be at least worth doing. The rest were not worth considering, and so I've not included them in this. So let's start with this first passage. Before a company can charge admission, it must design an experience that customers judge to be worth the price. Yet experiences like goods and services have their own distinct qualities and characteristics and present their own design challenges. So any company, any company, so before a company could ask a customer to pay something, so there is some experience that it needs to design. And there are different design challenges. Each model has got its own design challenges. So one way to think about these experiences, what kind of experiences are we talking about? So there are 2 dimensions. First corresponds to customer participation. At one end of the spectrum lies passive participation, in which customers don't affect the performance at all. Such participants include symphony goers, for example, who experience the event as observers or listeners. So if you've got a symphony or a classical concert or anything like that, where the participants are silent observers, they don't really, they are not like the participant in a concert or in a rock show or somewhere where they also participate in the sense that they are very vocal, they're very loud, they're enthused, they're energetic, and that energy can actually influence the performance also. Whereas here, the customers are more of silent observers. They appreciate it. They definitely clap when needed, but they don't really influence the performance at all. So these are observers or listeners. At the other end of the spectrum lies active participation, in which customers play key roles in creating the performance or event that yields the experience. These include skiers, but even people who turn out to watch a ski race are not completely passive participants. Simply by being there, they contribute to the visual and oral event that others experience. Same thing is true for not just a ski race, but even maybe a Formula One, or maybe a derby, a horse race, or maybe a cricket match or a football match. Because these people they are not passive participants. Right? They are very vocal, they are charged up, and their energy can actually rub off on the participants. So at one end, we have just observers and listeners, and the other hand, we have people who contribute to the event. They are not passive. So this is one dimension. Second dimension describes the connection or the environmental relationship that unites customers with events or performance. At one end of the connection spectrum lies absorption. At the other end lies immersion. People viewing Kentucky Derby from grandstand can observe the event taking place beneath and in front of them. Meanwhile, people standing in infield are immersed. Now, if you are watching let's say, a horse race, derby race, so there are 2 ways. One, you are watching from the grandstand. So there you can absorb the atmosphere which is there in front of you. Whereas if you're standing infield, then you are immersed in the sight, sounds, and smells. So this is absorption and this is immersion. Furiously scribbling notes while listening to a physics lecture is more absorbing than reading a textbook. Seeing a film at theater with an audience, large screen, and stereophonic sound is more immersing than watching the same film on video at home. So there are 2 different aspects again. One is the absorption, one is immersion. We can sort experiences into 4 broad categories according to where they fall along the spectra of these 2 dimensions. Kind of experiences most people think of as entertainment. Watching television, attending a concert tend to be those in which customers participate more passively. तो जिसको entertainment कहते हैं, television और concert, इसमें more passively करते हैं. Their connection with the event is more likely one of absorption than immersion. Educational events, attending a class, taking a ski lesson, tend to involve more active participation. As students or customers are still more outside the event than immersed. Escapist experiences can take just as well as educational events or amuse as well as entertainment, but they involve greater customer immersion. Acting in a play, playing in an orchestra, descending the Grand Canyon involve both participation and immersion. To minimize the customer's active participation, however, an escapist event becomes an experience of the 4th kind, the aesthetic. So here customers or participants are immersed in activity, but they themselves have little or no effect, like a tourist who merely views the Grand Canyon or from its rim, or visitor to an art gallery. So different kinds of experiences, 4 broad categories based upon One is active participation or passive participation, then absorption or immersion. So there are 4 different types of categories they have created. Generally, we find that richest experiences such as going to an amusement park like Disney World or gambling in Las Vegas casino encompass aspects of all 4 realms, forming a sweet spot around the area where the spectrum meet. But still, the universe of possible experiences is vast. Eventually, the most significant question managers can ask themselves is, what specific experience will my company offer? That experience will come to define their business. So what it is that you are going to offer? In which category would you like your customers to be? So that is a very important question, and that will define their business. So in such passages, it is not really wise to try to understand each and every aspect of it in great detail. Absorption kya hai, immersion kya hai, active participation kya hai, passive kya hai, and then the rest of these 4. We can see what the question asks, and we can go and check from that particular aspect of the passage. Right. So let's head off to the questions. The last line of the passage suggests that. Last line says, what specific experiences will my company offer? That experience will come to define their business. Businesses should offer both absorbing and immersive experiences to survive. So he's not recommending. He's not recommending that you do A or B or C or D. He's simply saying that you should be able to define what category of business, of experience your business offers, and that will define it. He's not recommending any particular experience. Every business must offer a unique experience to be profitable. Again, he's not suggesting that each and every company, because there are only 4 broad categories. So how can each and every company offer a unique experience? You will have to have a mix of these. So, and it's not necessary that 2 companies offering the same experience, they are not profitable. One is profitable, one is not. Nothing like that can be inferred from whatever has been written here. Every business must offer an experience that justifies the price the customer pays. Again, there's no justification of any price. A concert goer might be asked to pay thousands of dollars, whereas a football match may even give a ticket for $100 or $50. So there is absolutely no matching of that particular experience with the price that the customer pays. Nothing like that has been discussed in the passage. So this is also an easy eliminate. Businesses are characterized by the kind of experience they offer. Absolutely clear. In fact, this question could be even done without even reading the passage. This is a good indicator of such a question, that if you are left with very little time, simply look at the questions, and these kind of questions can be done without even looking at the passage. Which of the following is the author least likely to approve of based on the information in the passage? Least likely to approve of. River rafting is an example of an activity that offers both active participation and immersion. So when you do river rafting, you are yourself in that particular raft, and you are also rowing it, and you are also actually participating in it. So definitely it is active participation, and it's immersion because you are there within it. You are there in the river. You can see the sights, smell, the sounds around. Okay, for immersion, the qualification was that you are immersed in the sights, sounds, and smells that surround them. And absorbed means you are actually participating in it in a sense. So you are doing both here. So this is, author will definitely approve of this. The wrong answer. Attending a painting class involves more active participation than immersion. So if you're attending a painting class, then obviously there is no immersion there. You are not immersed in that particular sight, smell, or sound or anything. Okay, it's not an event that's happening wherein you are immersed by that experience. Okay, you are basically scribbling notes while listening to a physics lecture is more absorbing, right? So attending a painting class, so you yourself are painting. So that involves more active participation than immersion. So this also author will agree with. Attending a yoga class when one focuses on blindly following the instructor is an aesthetic event. Now, aesthetic event, how did he define? Aesthetic event is something where customers or participants are immersed in an activity or entertainment, but they themselves have little or no effect on it. Like a tourist who merely views the Grand Canyon from its rim, or like a visitor to an art gallery. He's not doing anything. But this person who is visiting or who is viewing the Grand Canyon, or let's say Niagara Falls, or let's say something from outside, so that person is not really absorbed in doing anything. That person is aesthetic. Okay, so that person is basically so person who is not himself or herself doing something will be aesthetic. Whereas here, attending a yoga class where one focuses blindly on following the instructor. So this guy is also doing yoga, whoever it is. Person is blindly following the instructor, that's fine. But the person is doing yoga. So doing yoga does not mean, so it is basically active participation, right? So the person, let's say, is descending the Grand Canyon, right? So that's an active participation. So attending a class, so this is like an educational event. Attending a class, taking a ski lesson tends to involve more active participation. Students are still more outside the event than immersed in action. So that way, this can be called as active participation, but it definitely cannot be called aesthetic. So this looks like something that the author will least likely to approve of. So we can keep it. Playing a virtual game of tennis with your friend is an escapist event. Escapist event क्या होता है? Can teach just as well, just as an educational events can, or amuse just as well. They involve greater customer immersion. So escapist mein you are acting in a play, playing in an orchestra, or descending the Grand Canyon. So obviously this means that you are immersed in that. So when you are playing a virtual game of tennis, you are definitely immersed in it. So this is an escapist event. The author will agree with it. So correct answer was C. That yoga class is not really aesthetic event. As per this, it is educational event, which is active participation, not immersed. Aesthetic is when you are immersed but not doing anything. Which of the following statements, if true, weakens the author conclusion from the example of symphony goers? So symphony goers example, let's take a look at it. So at the end of one spectrum lies passive participation in which customers don't affect the performance at all. Such participants include symphony goers. So symphony goers are basically people or participants who do not affect the performance at all. So we need to weaken it. So we need to weaken this conclusion. So we need to find a statement that can tell you that no, the symphony goers also influence the performance in some way. If we find an option like that, then that will be the correct answer. A lot more goes into the quality of symphony experience than just the musician's pedigree. See, whatever it is, this has got nothing to do with the symphony goer. So this is irrelevant. The music awareness of the audience at a symphony influences the performance of the musician. Okay. So if the audience is aware, the audience is well versed in the kind of music that is being played, then that can influence the performance. This surely weakens it, because he's saying this doesn't affect the performance at all. So we find an answer or an option as we were discussing. We find an option which tells you that no, the audience goer or the symphony goer affects the performance in some way. So we can keep this. Symphonies played to packed halls offer the same experience as those played in empty theaters. So this rather strengthens. This strengthens that it doesn't, the symphony goers, it strengthens the author's conclusion rather than weakening. This is wrong. Symphony is best experienced by audience members who are aware of nuances. Fine, they may be aware, but does it influence the authors, the symphony conductors or orchestra's performance? No. Correct answer is B here. Which of the following statement is not necessarily compatible with the author's explanation of the two aspects of second dimension of experience? Second dimension of experience क्या है? A connection or environmental relationship that unites the customer to the event or performance. At one end lies absorption, at the other immersion. So absorption and immersion are the second dimension. So which is not necessarily compatible. Watching a cricket match at a sports bar is more immersing than watching the same match intently by oneself at home. Definitely this is compatible because if you are seeing a film at the theater with an audience, large screen and stereophonic is more immersing than watching the same film or video at home. So this is similar. Watching a cricket match at a sports bar is more immersing than watching the same match intently by oneself at home. This is exactly a parallel situation of what is given here. So which is more immersing. So this is definitely compatible, so not the answer. Concentrating on a lecture in a classroom is more absorbing than listening to a video recording of the same. This is also given here. Furiously scribbling notes while listening to a physics lecture is more absorbing than reading a textbook. So we have an exact parallel here. Concentrating on lecture on classroom is more absorbing than listening to a video recording. Attending a concert with one's friend is more immersing than listening to the same songs on a phone app. So again, attending a concert is more immersing, definitely, uh, than listening to the same songs on phone app. Yes, we can say that. Attending a football match with friends is more absorbing than attending a football match alone. Oh, how can they be different? You are attending a football match with friends, and here you are attending the same match alone. So there is no difference. You can't say that this is more absorbing, because absorbing means when you are actually involved, right? Uh, so people viewing the Kentucky Derby from the grandstand can absorb the event taking place. So when you are, whether you are sitting with friends or you are sitting alone, you can absorb the scene in front of you. You are watching a match, cricket match, football match, the same way. So we cannot say that watching with friends is more absorbing. So this is a correct answer. This is not necessarily compatible. All right. So I hope the passage and the questions are clear. Let's go to the next one. The levelers are a hidden gem from British history. They were a mid-17th century group in England who participated in debates about democracy that took place in a part of London called Putney. Their achievement was crafting an agreement of the people, which were a series of manifestos that marked the first popular conceptions of what a constitutional democracy might look like. Okay, so these are a group of people, levelers. They are supposed to be a hidden gem. So they were in this time, at these times, and in England, and they were drafted something called as Agreement of the People. So constitutional democracy. Okay, they were the first popular. So whatever they drafted were the first popular conceptions of constitutional democracy. The levelers are interesting for two reasons. First, in the context of the time, their approach was constructive and practical. Agreement spells out what people want from those who govern in a clear and tangible way. For example, they propose term limits on political office, and the laws regarding indebtedness are applied equally to rich and poor. Fine, very easy, very clear what they did. So two reasons. First is that approach was constructive and practical. Second, they're interesting for the way the movement was countermanded and then snuffed out by the military leader Oliver Cromwell and the grandees, the elites of the day. Like so many idealistic political startups, the levelers failed. This should encourage the growing number of new political parties like Change UK and new candidates to be worldly wise in how they approach the process of political reform and change. So, second, why they're interesting is because they were snuffed out. Their movement was countermanded by the elites of the day, which means the military leaders. The military leader and the other elites, they were able to suppress this movement. So like many political startups, they failed. So this gives a lesson to the growing number of new political groups that they need to be worldly wise. They need to do factor in all of these things, how the movement can be suppressed. So before they approach the process of political reform, these were levelers for people who were trying to create some political reform. They drafted manifestos. They were the first ones to spell out what people wanted from the government, but the movement was snuffed out. A lot is made of the Cold War rivalry between Russia and America, and now some want to see a clash of civilization between America and China. The leveling characterizes a future when there are at least two approaches to public life. Most distinctive approach to nations doing things in their own way will be for what levelers might call the rights of freeborn men, or the idea of open society. The code of levelers present a very clear political formula that Europeans and Americans will recognize for its values, though decreasingly in its practice. So, Cold War rivalry used to be there between communist Russia and America, but now, since that is no longer there for the last 30 plus years, so people now want to see a clash of civilizations between America and China. So leveling is a concept that envisages the future. There are these two approaches. The most distinctive approach is called the right by what these people might call rights of freeborn men, or idea of open society. So Europeans and Americans recognize it, but he's saying that it is also decreasing in its practice. The challenge to this code will come from the rising acceptance of less democratic ways of ordering society. So let's say Europe, America, or even India for that matter. So we are society that are basically constitutional democracies, and we recognize rights of freeborn men, or open societies. But the challenge will come from societies that are less democratic in both developed and developing countries. The related clash will be the desire of a growing population of electorates to have a more open society as the economy is also open up. So more number of electorates would want a clash in order to have a more open society. as the word evolves along the lines of leveler type and Leviathan type. Now, I think from wherever they have picked up the passage, they maybe skipped a few paragraphs and suddenly they've got a Leviathan type society here. So without any reference of Leviathan, now what is Leviathan? So if you recollect, Leviathan was the great work of Thomas Hobbes. So Leviathan basically was the first, you can say, social. It was like creating a social contract. So it said that because humans are insecure, they can be attacked anytime by anybody. They don't have the freedom, or they don't have the rights. So they need to have a governance. Now they surrendered some of the rights in order to get security. So this was a Leviathan type society wherein people surrendered their freedom and rights in order to get security from whoever was ruling. So that's what is a Leviathan type society. So suddenly this fellow has brought in this term. So as the world evolves around the line of leveler type are the ones who are proponents of freedom, free society, open society. Whereas Leviathans are those societies that are more restricted, they are less democratic. It is possible that in some countries such as Russia, a Leviathan-like approach that is in order in exchange for reduced democracy and rights will be the accepted way of life. In other countries, most interestingly, China, as its economy loses momentum and evolves, there may be a growing tension between groups holding the Leviathan view, supported inevitably by grandees, and opposing leveler-like groups who favor equality of opportunity and a multi-party system. The role and views of women, especially in China, and of minority groups like the gay community, will be pivotal. So here he's saying now there are two approaches. One is a leveler-like approach, which is more of democracy and rights to people, and the other is Leviathan. So in some countries like Russia, Leviathan approach might be the accepted way of life, and in the other like China, there could be tension between people who support leveler or Leviathan. As economy loses momentum, obviously the people would be challenging the Leviathan view. That's what he's saying. And of course, the role and views of women and the other minority would be pivotal, means important. The emergence of a new world order based on large regions and colored by leveler and Leviathan modes of governance echoes several periods in history. The challenge in the next few years will be for Leviathan-oriented nations like China to maintain economic stability so that rising unemployment, for instance, does not break the Leviathan contract. Equally, the challenge in leveler countries will be to maintain open, fraternal societies in the face of political and potentially economic volatility. So he's saying that these two ideologies, you can say, or world order, you can say, they will continue. And Leviathan-oriented nations like China, they need to maintain economic stability, otherwise people will revolt, and the Leviathan contract might be broken or challenged. Whereas in leveler countries, they should be able to maintain open societies despite having economic or political volatility. Right? So leveler approach and Leviathan approach. Leveler approach basically is about when you care for rights of people, order, of course, you care for, but you care for rights and freedom also. Whereas in Leviathan society, you have more of restriction on rights, less democracy, but more focus on order. And as in a society like China, if the economy is not doing very good, then there could be a clash between people who want a multi-party system, they want more open environment, equality of opportunity. So those kind of levelers would clash with the Leviathan set of people. And in leveler countries, they should be able to maintain the open society despite facing a lot of volatility in economic and political systems. So let's take a look at questions. The Leviathan view and the leveler view societies are different in that. Former prefers order over freedom. So Leviathan prefers order over freedom. This is fine. यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है Leviathan जो है order in exchange for reduced democracy and rights, whereas the latter prefers the reverse. So is it so? Is that in a leveler society they want freedom over order? They don't want order. So it's not like that. The second part is not correct. Leveler society does not, see, they prefer freedom. Of course, they want freedom, they want openness, they want democracy, they want rights, but not compromising order. They want both. So you can't say that in a leveler society, they would want to surrender the order and they would just want to have freedom, which means they are okay with having freedom at the cost of chaos also. So if there is a chaos, so nothing like that has been mentioned. So this is wrong. The second part of this option is wrong. Though it looks a very attractive option, and I think some of you may have fallen into it as a trap. Fallen for it rather. Former compromises democracy and rights for order, whereas the latter doesn't. So former compromises democracy and rights for order. ये लिखा है यहाँ पे इसमें. Order in exchange for reduced democracy and rights, whereas the latter doesn't. Yes, so they don't compromise democracy and rights for order, so they want everything. So this B option becomes the correct answer. Looks like former promises political stability, latter promises economy. Nothing like that has been mentioned, that in a Leviathan society you have political stability and in a leveler you have economic. Nothing like that. Former is supported by the common man, whereas latter is supported by the grandee. Absolutely not. In fact, levelers were snuffed out or suppressed by grandees. So this is factually also wrong. Correct answer is B. The author's advice to China would be. Now, the answer to this question is here in the last paragraph. Challenge in the next few years will be for Leviathan-oriented nations like China to maintain economic stability so that rising unemployment, for instance, does not break. So the author would in some way try to suggest to China or recommend that please ensure that the unemployment doesn't rise. It should move to a multi-party system. It should offer greater rights to women and gay. Now, this is again an option that might seem attractive. We'll keep it. It should try to maintain open fraternal societies. No. He's not recommending that China changes over to leveler or Russia changes over to leveler or a leveler changes over to Leviathan. Nothing like that. He simply mentioned that these are the two ideologies or the ways of the world, and these are the challenges with each of them. It should keep unemployment below the threshold that threatens this order. Yes, this looks as what we were discussing. Now, let's just evaluate B also. So, role and views of women, especially in China and minority groups, will be pivotal. Now, does it mean that it should offer greater rights to women and gay community? No. What he means is that their vote or whatever their views, the role and views of women and gay community will be pivotal. Pivotal means crucial. It doesn't mean that China should offer greater rights. That's not what is written over there. So we should not infer this, though it looked an attractive option because of women and gay community, whatever has been talked about here. But that doesn't say that you should offer greater rights to women. So this is wrong, and D is the right answer. It should keep unemployment below the threshold that threatens its order. The author's opinion about challenges facing leveler type societies is weakened by which of the following? So, challenges facing leveler type societies. So, what are the leveler type societies? What are the challenges? So, that is mentioned in the end. The challenge in leveler countries will be to maintain open fraternal societies in the face of political and potentially economic volatility. That if there is a leveler country and they have a political and potentially economic volatility, then they should be able to maintain openness. That's the challenge. So how do you weaken that? How do you weaken that? So one way to weaken that is to say that the political and economic volatilities do not matter. They don't matter. So then obviously these challenges, whatever the author is saying, these are challenges of maintaining open society, that gets weakened. So let's see if there's an option like that. The stability of leveler type political system is dependent upon the economic prosperity of the country. See, he has not given this kind of So stability of leveler type political system is dependent on the economic prosperity. So is this weakening or this is strengthening? Challenges facing. So will be to maintain open fraternal society in the face of political and potentially economic volatility. So if let's say there is a challenge to the economic prosperity, so will the society be able to maintain the openness? So this rather strengthens the author's challenge that stability is dependent on the economic prosperity. So if the economic prosperity becomes or goes or is in doldrums, then the stability would be shaken up. So this is actually a challenge that is facing it. So it is not being weakened; it is rather being strengthened. This is wrong. The economic stability of leveler type societies is tightly coupled with their political stability. Now, this is exactly again the same challenge, or this is also strengthening. The economic stability is tightly coupled with political stability. So if one gets shaken, the others will also get shaken, and therefore the society may not be able to maintain its openness. So this also is a strengthening thing. The political and economic volatilities of leveler type societies do not affect their open and fraternal nature. Okay. Now just look at this sentence here. The challenge will be to maintain in the face of political and potentially economic volatility. Now, if these don't affect, then there is no challenge. So this effectively weakens it. We'll keep it. Economic stability is only loosely coupled with their political stability. Again, this doesn't really weaken, whether it is only loosely coupled. So, okay, economic stability is only loosely coupled with their political stability. So this is exactly the opposite of economic stability is tightly coupled with their political stability. So in one way, somebody might say that this, if this is strengthening, then this could be weakening. But this is actually, if you see, it is irrelevant. Economic stability is only loosely coupled with their political stability. So even if, let's say, the country is politically stable, but the economic stability is not there, so then also there could be a challenge to the society, right? So therefore, this is actually not the answer. Correct answer is C. It does not affect their open and fraternal nature. All right. The distinction the author draws up between Russia and China is that Russia has a Leviathan-like approach, whereas China swings between Leviathan and leveler orientation. No, China doesn't swing between Leviathan. He's saying there would be a clash. There could be a clash between leveler society there and Leviathan there if, let's say, the unemployment goes up, the situation, economic turmoil happens. So we can't say that it swings between these. So first part is okay, but second part is wrong. In Russia, the Leviathan approach holds sway, whereas in China, the economic momentum swings power from Leviathan to levelers. Again, there will be a clash. It doesn't mean that the power will swing. It has gone from Leviathan to levelers. China doesn't have multi-party system at all. So levelers, it is not that levelers have been able to hold sway over Leviathans. It has not happened. There could be clash. The clashes always happen, but in clashes, which one wins, that's not certain. Russia's order depends on its Leviathan-like approach, whereas China's economic slowdown fuels the tension between Leviathan and leveler group. Yes, this is exactly what he has mentioned here. There is maybe a growing tension between groups holding Leviathan view and opposing leveler-like views. So this looks okay. In Russia, it is acceptable for order to be maintained in exchange for reduce. This is fine. See, सभी का ये first part सही है इसमें. In all of these options, the first part is okay about Russia. But in China, the order depends upon economic. Again, this is like option B only, and which is why it is wrong. Correct answer is C. All right, let's take a look at the next passage. Since the Renaissance, when revolutionaries like Giotto and Brunelleschi used one-point perspective to project the seen world onto the canvas, painting was traditionally devoted towards reproducing vision as it's captured by the human eye. The collective aim of the medium was to present scenes from life and history with total realism. Today, however, we take for granted the canvas does not faithfully reflect the way we see the world. That a painting has its own internal rationality, a vocabulary of color, shape, and texture that provide the roadmap for the viewer's eye. In other words, the vision that the painter presents his work does not have to be literal one. A leap forward for the potentialities of the art. How did this remarkable shift occur. So there's a little bit of a history here of art that since Renaissance in 15th century, and these have been using single point perspective. So whatever they capture by the eye, that is what they reproduce on the canvas. So whatever scenes from life or history were presented with total realism. But now we know that we already take for granted that canvas does not reflect what the way we see the world. That painting can have its own internal rationality. That means whatever appears to you is not what is actually it is. Okay, author doesn't see something and presents it exactly the same way it is. So the vocabulary of color, the way the colors are given, shapes, texture, it provides a roadmap. That means a viewer can look at these and reach whatever destination it wants to reach. Somebody might reach destination A, somebody might reach B, somebody might reach C. It didn't used to happen in the earlier paintings. In other words, the vision that painter presents does not have to be literal one, a leap forward for the potentialities of art. So how did this shift occur? In early 20th century, encouraged by aesthetic revisiting of what were then still considered primitive arts, most prominently those of Africa and Asia, and spurred on by rapid developments in photography in the late 19th century, which alleviated painting of its need to faithfully depict the natural world, European artists began experimenting with abstraction, shattering conventional notions of functions of artistic composition. The artists most closely associated with so-called Cubism's conception are Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque, who collectively and secretively developed the concept behind the movement beginning in 1907. So, how did this movement happen? What brought about these changes? So they were encouraged by aesthetic revisiting. So there was a revisit to the primitive arts, mostly the African and Asian. So they had a relook at this authentic revisiting and spurred on by rapid developments in photography. Now, before photography came in, the onus of accurately capturing a view and presenting it to a viewer lay with the painter. So a painter used to faithfully capture whatever he was seeing and present it. But now that work could be done by a photo. Therefore, the painting was not needed to do the same thing. So it alleviated painting of its need to faithfully depict the natural world. So then the European artists began experimenting with abstraction and shattering conventional notions. And the two guys involved in this were Picasso and Georges Braque. They developed the concepts. Many historians credit Picasso's Les Demois d'Union as the foundational work of Cubism and thus of all modern art. It shows a radical shift of perspective, showing two views of a scene at once. This was unprecedented in the painting at time. The achievement of one-point perspective had been a drastic step forward in pictorial representation. Here was Picasso undoing it all. Understandably, Matisse called the work death of painting. So Picasso's this painting, Avignon, whatever it is. So this was a foundational work, and it showed two views of the scene. That means looking at the painting, you cannot say that it is some might see one view, some might see the other view. This was not done earlier. The single point perspective was the achievement of painting. It had been a great step forward, but Picasso had undone it all. And therefore, Matisse, who was another painter, called this death of painting, because the single point perspective had brought painting so this far. It had taken it on a great step forward, but now this was being undone by Picasso. Between 1907 and 1912, the period so-called analytic cubism, Picasso's and Braque's painting became almost indistinguishable as they together developed a street-level color palette limited to off-white, grays, browns, and blacks, stark angular forms that were meant to appeal to the viewer's intellect rather than emotions. So those colors, red or green or blues or vibrant colors, pastel colors, were not used. Street-level color palette were used, and angular forms were used, stark. So they were meant to attract the viewer's intellect rather than emotions, emulating the way images are formed in the brain rather than the eye, and depicting multiple viewpoints at once. The pair eschewed or avoided beauty or idealized forms in favor of an entirely new investigative approach to the medium. It was what Metzinger referred to as a total emancipation of painting. So this showed multiple viewpoints, and it eschewed or avoided beauty. So there was no beauty as such being presented. The beauty of nature or beauty of somebody's face or beauty of some other landscape or something, or any other idealized form was not presented. And there was a new investigative approach. That means one has to explore and find out for himself or herself. And this is known as this is what Metzinger called the total emancipation, freedom. Emancipation means freedom. Between 1913 and 1920, the initial development of analytic cubism were expanded into what came to be called synthetic cubism, which emphasized the synthesis of elements of composition, introduced the idea of collaging elements onto the canvas, pieces of rope, cigar papers, and so on, and further breaking down the relationship between the surface of painting and its subject matter. So now, instead of only the colors on that canvas, there used to be some objects also that were kind of integrated into the canvas. They were pieces of rope or cigars. So they also were included in the collage on the canvas. So this further broke down the relationship between surface of the painting and the subject matter. From its entrance onto the global public stage, Cubism was a contentiously debated movement, and as such fully codified art's new function in modern society. Its tendency to get people talking. The more heated, the better. Now, this is a very important and crucial line here. So once it entered the public stage, it was contentiously debated. Now, obviously, there are a lot of debates happening around it. There were. So why it is needed? When art had progressed so much, then why was this? Why this? We are undoing this totally. And what is the need of presenting multiple viewpoints? Or what is the need of presenting to the intellect rather than the emotions? All of those things must have been debated at that time. And as such, codified art's new functions. Codified art's new functions. So art's function became these debates. That means art was made to stir these debates, kind of. Its tendency to get people talking. That means the more controversy painting generates, the better it is. So the art's purpose basically changed from just amusing, entertaining, or giving that aesthetic view to the viewer or to the society. It basically now evolved into a kind of a medium that could get more and more controversies on and more debates, right? So the purpose of the art changed, so to say. Cubism revolved the mind against decorative frivolity. So decorative frivolity means something which is trivial, which is unimportant. So earlier it was considered as something, some people maybe used to call it decorative frivolity. That means it is just a trivial thing. It doesn't really give you that kind of, let's say, somebody who needs mental stimulation, or somebody who needs a deeper satisfaction or deeper sense of profound meaning in it. So it was just a decorative frivolity. So this was a revolt against that. It left its major legacy in art history in the lasting idea that perception is a fluid, mutable thing, and that is not only governed by our biology or physiology, but can actually be created anew within and then projected from objects of art. So perception is something which is not just governed by our biology and physiology, but it can be also projected from the works of art. So this was what Cubism was all about. So this passage talks about how Cubism or modern art, it evolved, how a single point perspective was changed into a multiple point perspective, how art evolved from being just a aesthetic piece or a decorative frivolity to something which was more profound, something that people started talking, discussing, debating, and generating controversies on. Which of the following wasn't discussed as a contributing factor for the rise of Cubism and modern art? So where would we get the answer? The answer is given in second paragraph. Right. So let's take a look at each and every option here. A stark streak of rebellion against established conventions by avant-garde. Avant-garde means pioneer or somebody who's wanting to go against the norms. Okay, somebody who wants to challenge the norms. So here it shows they began experimenting with abstraction, shattering conventional notions of functions of artistic composition. So we can say that this is a contributing factor. The handing over of responsibility to depict reality as captured by the human eye to photography. Yes, this was also a reason that spurred by rapid developments in photography, which elevated painting of its need to faithfully depict the natural world. Art was left to do this kind of a thing. So art was not needed to represent things faithfully. That was done by photography. So this is also given. Discovery of aesthetics of Asian and African arts. So this looks like a correct, this looks like another contributing factor, because this is what has been written here. But here, the important word is revisiting. Whereas here, the word is discovery. Let's take a look at the fourth option. A change of stance towards hitherto ignored style of arts. Yes, towards hitherto. So these were uh, these were arts that were not really uh, in the focus, right? They were hitherto ignored. So there is a change in stance. Aesthetic revisiting of what were then still considered primitive art. So these were considered primitive. They were not worth considering. They were hitherto ignored. So there was a revisiting. So this option is correct. There was a change of stance towards hitherto ignored style of art, and it led to the Cubism and rise of Cubism. So we can say this. Correct answer is C here. The discovery of aesthetics. Discovery is not correct. Rediscovery of aesthetics, you can say. Rediscovery, not discovery. So this slight bit of a stunt that this fellow had put in this option. So that is what made this option as correct. So many of you may have missed it. Right? So this was a cheap trick, you can say. Not a very good question, not a very good option, but can't do anything. All of the following can be inferred about Cubism from the passage except perceptions presented in Cubist paintings appeal to reason more than to emotion. Very clearly given here. To intellect rather than emotions. Very clearly given. Not the answer. The relationship between the surface and theme of painting isn't rigid. Again, very clearly given here in this collaging elements into canvas, pieces of rope, cigar papers, and so on. Very clearly given. Paintings aren't bound to the rule of projecting a single perspective. Correct. Multiple perspectives being proposed there. Right. Very clearly read multiple viewpoints. Right. Multiple viewpoints at once. So all of these are characteristics of Cubism. Abstraction did away with the traditional functions of the artistic composition. Abstraction did away with the traditional functions of the artistic composition. So abstraction, what did it do? So let's take a look at this. European artists began experimenting with abstraction, shattering conventional notions of the function of artistic shattering conventional notions of the functions of artistic composition. So abstractions did away with the traditional functions of artistic composition. Conventional notions of the functions. Traditional functions, no. So again, here is a cheap trick here. Okay. Abstraction did not do away with the traditional functions. Abstraction did away with the conventional notions. Okay, this is very important here. So this is with the conventional notions of the traditional functions. Okay, so conventional notions of the function of artistic composition, not the traditional functions of artistic composition. So this is the distortion here, and that's why D becomes the correct answer. Again, this is not a very good question. Cheap stunt, but whatever it is. Picasso's The Afternoon was called the death of painting, most probably because it represented a drastic shift from all the conventions of pictorial representation. Let's read this line where it is. The achievements of one point perspective had been a drastic step forward in pictorial representation. Right? And here was Picasso undoing it all. So this single point perspective, whatever achievements it had brought about, or whatever achievement had been, they were a drastic step forward in pictorial representation, and therefore Picasso here was undoing it all. So drastic shift from the conventions, or it dismantled the progress that painting achieved through a single perspective. Yes, this is a better answer than A. We'll keep it. It involved creative perspectives that were never imagined. See, this is a very vague and a broad answer that were never imagined. So how do we know that it was never imagined? It may have been imagined but never done before. Okay, here Picasso was doing it, so we don't know. We don't know. It did irreversible damage to the foundation. No, it didn't do any damage. We can't say that it damaged the foundational work of painting. So this is totally wrong. Correct answer is B. It dismantled the progress that painting achieved through the single perspective approach. Which of the following statement is most justified regarding the controversy that surrounded Cubism as discussed in the last part of the passage? So last part of the passage says that Cubism was a contentiously debated movement and as such fully codified art's new function. Okay, that means art's new function is now not to appreciate art or anything, but rather to create controversies, get people talking more heatedly, the better. So the controversy fulfills the purpose of art in modern society. Yes, the controversy fulfills the purpose of art. The purpose of art itself is to create controversy. So we can keep this. Controversy was inevitable. We can't say that it was inevitable or anything. Nothing like that has been mentioned here. Expected response of purists. So we don't know whether there was a response of purists or what kind of controversy it was, between whom, what were the purists saying, were they criticizing it? Nothing like that has been mentioned. It is just that it is creating a controversy, heated debates. But what those debates were about, we don't know. Controversy was testimony to the fact that Cubism instigates intellect. Again, this is not the correct extrapolation. We can't say that Cubism instigates intellect. Instigate means provokes or incites. So provokes, it's not, see, it basically, it appeals to the intellect. Appeals to the intellect does not mean it instigates, right? So A is the right answer. All right, so 2 questions are iffy here. Rather, one question was more iffy here. The second one first was okay. Still cheap trick here. In this second question, the trick was even cheaper, I would say, or rather more ludicrous kind of a trick. All right, let's go to the next part, which is para summaries. So out of 8 questions, I could just find these 3 para summaries that were, and they were easy. The para summaries, I found them to be very easy, straightforward, but the para jumbles, which were given with options, were all ridiculous, and para completion again were very ambiguous, and the sentence could have been fitted in more places than one, and therefore I've not included them in this discussion here. So if equality of educational opportunity can be established, democracy will be real and justified. For this is the vital truth beneath its catchwords, that though human cannot be equal, their access to education opportunity can be made more nearly equal. Rights of humans are not rights to office and power, but the rights of entry into every avenue that may nourish and test their fitness for office and power. A right is not a gift of God or nature, but a privilege which is good for the group that the individual should have. So equality of educational opportunity can justify democracy, right? People may not be created equal, but they should be given equal opportunity, access to education opportunity, so that they have the right to compete for office and power. Okay, they may not have right to power, but they may have right to compete. So that is what equality of educational opportunity could do. Democracy will be justified when there is equal access to educational opportunity, enabling everyone's right to prepare for office. This looks 5. Democracy will be justified. It looks okay. Equal access to educational opportunity, enabling everyone's right to prepare for office, right? So right to entry into every avenue. We'll keep this. Democracy demands, this is a question mark here, for every individual the right to educational opportunity and access to any office that tests their fitness for power. Again, this is a very distorted way of presenting it. It doesn't demand access to any office. Nobody, this means that the way this option is worded, it means every individual has access to, should be provided access to any office. How can it happen? So this is totally absurd. Yes, anyone's enabling, so everyone, so it's like saying that this first option, or the way it is presented in the passage, that everybody has a right to appear for, let's say, an exam like UPS. Everybody has a right to appear for exam like UPSC, that is that tests their fitness for office and power. But this option, second option, is trying to present it that everybody has a right to get that office. Everybody can be a magistrate or a collector or whatever one wants. So this is totally distorted. Democracy rests on the assumption that when humans enjoy equal access to education opportunity, they become equal. This is totally wrong. They become equal. This is not what they are suggesting. And assumption, rest on the assumption, when humans, so this is needed for the way it is presented in the passage, this equal access to education opportunity is needed to justify democracy. Okay, the democracy rests on assumption. Okay, maybe we can say this, but the second part is totally wrong here. Okay, so we can remove this. Democracy is justified when humans who are not created equal enjoy equal access to education and opportunity. So when humans who are not created equal, some humans may have been created equal also, right? So humans who are not created equal enjoy equal access to education and opportunity. And here one more point is missing: enabling everyone's right to prepare for office. Okay, the rights to entry into every avenue that may nourish and test their fitness for office. Or this part is not given here. Or humans who are not created equal. This is not how you qualify humans. That when humans who are not created equal enjoy equal access, but not other humans. This option suggests that only humans who are created equal enjoy equal access, not the who are not created equal. But those humans who are created equal should not be given equal access. This is wrong, the wrong way of presenting it. A is the correct answer. The appearance of new technology signifies the move from industrial society to the knowledge and information society, and this transformation means a radical change in the way companies are managed. So new technology आ गई, तो industrial society जो है knowledge और information society बन गई. There's a radical way change in the way companies are managed. The knowledge society demands a new focus, new vision of how organizations should be managed. Companies have come to two conclusions about the new focus. Person is the major asset. Company cannot be alien to the environment in which it lives and develops. Company's ability to assimilate and take advantage of these ideals is fundamental to its ability to be efficient and profitable in today's world. So, in with the new technology coming in, there's a transformation, move from industrial society to knowledge society, and this means that companies should change. So, companies, if they want to be profitable and efficient, then they need to keep in mind that person is their major asset, and their operations are not alienated from the environment. So in a knowledge society, people who work for a company and the environments in which such companies evolve determine the profitability. This is total distortion. He's not saying that people who work in environment evolve where the companies evolve. He's saying that companies who are mindful of their people and the environments will be more efficient and profitable. So this is wrong. Companies have finally realized they should focus on people and environment in today's knowledge society. Why? For what? Why have they finally realized? And what has led to this? Is it new technology? That also has not been mentioned. Even this technology was not mentioned even in the first option. So this is wrong. New technology signifies the knowledge society where companies have to recognize the value of people and environments to be profitable. Looks fine. Knowledge societies rely on new technologies that help a company focus on its environment and employees better. New technologies that help a company, or new technology has made this move from industrial society to knowledge society, and in that knowledge society, a company has to focus on these two things to be profitable. So this is again a distortion, just putting up words and trying to create a sentence. So it's wrong. See, it's right as. All right. Sorry. Organizing is not a process of ideological matchmaking. Most people's politics will not mirror our own, and even people who identify with us strongly on some points will often differ sharply on others. When organizers do not fully understand each other's belief or identity, people will often stumble and offend one another, even if they earnestly wish to build from a place of solidarity. So organizing is not a process of ideological matchmaking. Okay, people's politics will be different. Some people will agree on some points, will agree or identify with some will not. An organization, when they do not understand all of these, then and people often stumble and offend, even if they earnestly wish to build a place. Efforts to build diverse intergenerational movements will always generate conflict and discomfort, but the desire to shrink groups down to spaces of easy agreement is not conducive to movement building. So if you want to organize a movement that is intergenerational or generational, or if you want to build a movement, then you will need to be able to be comfortable with the differences within people. You should not desire to have the people have the same ideology or agreement on everything. That is not good for any movement, right? So the passage says that कोई भी movement अगर आपको design करना है, that could be of impact or intergenerational movement, then you will need to accept that there will be differences among people, differences in ideologies. And you should not settle down for easy agreement, because that is not good. Organizing involves building from a place of solidarity, but movements involve building places where people offend each other. ये तो क्या बोल रहा है? People offend each other. He's not. People offending each other is not what is the crux here. He's saying people may offend and stumble, but then this has to be taken in stride. This is wrong. Diverse movements will witness conflict and disagreement, but weeding out conflict isn't helpful for building movements. Yes, removing conflict and disagreement will be there. But if you say that, no, I'll remove every conflict, then that is not good for building any movement. We'll keep this. Not all movements have people who agree with each other completely. But sometimes conflict helps diversity of the movement. Sometimes conflict helps. Here he's saying that conflict should be there. We should not weed away the conflict. And not all movements. This means some movements are there where people agree with each other. That's not written over here. He's not suggesting that there are some movements in which people agree with each other, and not all movements have people who agree with each other. This is wrong. The failure of organizers to understand each other's beliefs leads to conflict and disagreement between those who are part of the same movement. This is totally grossly distorted option, which can be easily removed, and therefore B is the correct answer. So as we've seen, the summaries were easy and we could do them. All right, so that's it for today. Thank you.